There are really two issues. One is the mechanical use of an auto pen in lieu of an actual signature by the president. But it seems to me that we're confronted with more important or more fundamental issues is, did the president know that the auto pen was being used for that purpose? And so one would be if somebody stole the auto pen and was signing pardons on behalf of the president. But what we're confronted with here is really the capacity of the president of the United States to understand what he was supposed to be doing. And just thinking about other areas of the law where capacity is important, and whenever it comes to people writing a will, let's say, for example, disposing of their property to their children and grandchildren, occasionally there arises the issue of testamentary capacity by the person disposing of their property. And generally speaking, to have testamentary capacity, that person must understand they're signing a will, they comprehend the nature and the extent of their property, they recognize their relationships with potential beneficiaries, and understand how the will disposes of their assets. So why can't we have a similar inquiry into the executive capacity, let's say, of the President of the United States to actually know what he or she is doing?
Senator, you're absolutely right that question, whether the president or somebody else who holds official power has the legal capacity to exercise it, is distinct from authentication of documents. Authentication of documents is important, but capacity is another question. With respect specifically to the president, I think the answer there is, and this may be out of the frying pan into the fire kind of answer. The answer there is Article 2 and then the 25th Amendment deal with the situation in which the president is unable to exercise his powers and duties. And I think it's a reasonable inference, although the Constitution doesn't come out and say this, that a president who is not determined to be unable through now what's the 25th Amendment process for making that determination. There's no process in Article 2 itself. The 25th Amendment added something. A president who has not been, pursuant to the 25th Amendment, determined not to be able to exercise the powers and duties of the president is presumed to have capacity to do that. I say that not on the basis of any sort of, other than practice, that's the way it's been for a couple of hundred years, but I think that is a reasonable inference from the fact that the Constitution does make a provision about what happens when the president's unable, and the 25th Amendment then provides a process to determine by which the president's unable.
Mr. Wald, following up on Professor Harrison's answer, the 25th Amendment requires actions by the Vice President and a majority of the Cabinet to declare the President incapacitated, incapable of carrying out his or her duties. But there doesn't appear to be any accountability or any remedy when they fail to act as they did in this case. Some have suggested that there may be potential crimes committed by members of the Cabinet for failing to act, basically suborning perjury, forging government documents, impersonating a federal officer, making false statements, conspiracy to defraud the United States, obstruction of justice, wire or mail fraud. Those are all statutes, criminal statutes that are on the books. Do you think there's any application of any of those criminal statutes to the circumstances of the Biden presidency and his incapacity and the failure of those persons, only persons authorized to question that incapacity under the 25th Amendment, the failure on their part to act?
Senator, there very well could be. I mean, obviously that would be a question for a prosecutor to take up in their discretion. I will say the 25th Amendment, it's a modern contrivance, but it still is consistent with American constitutional tradition, which it assumes that officers of the United States will act virtuously and morally. And the idea that members of the cabinet would go to the length of avoiding the Oval Office so as to abdicate their responsibility to verify the appropriateness of the president's acuity or the ability to authenticate actions taken by the president. If that's not a constitutional scandal, I mean, honestly, I don't know what would constitute such. So yeah, I mean, I think there could be the potential for crimes, but moreover, the 25th Amendment can only function in its procedural mechanisms if people are actually willing to call a spade a spade.
Senator Britt.
Thank you, and I really appreciate Senator Cornyn, Senator Schmidt calling this hearing.